it really brought me back to the problem that I have on the lifeblood of business in many ways, which is referrals.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story. It takes place 15 and a half years ago, but it has echoes to last week. 15 and a half years ago, in June of 2005, we moved into our new house, and we were meeting everybody because it was a new development. We were meeting all the new neighbors. And at one of the very first meetings, one of the neighbors introduced himself, and in what I understand is a typically American fashion, immediately told me what he did, and he's a financial planner. And when he learned that I was a lawyer, he said, we could refer people back and forth, and we could really build each other's clientele. So why don't we get together? And he was very eager on this. And I made the mistake of telling him exactly what I was thinking, which is that I tend not to refer to financial planners because I have no way of gauging how good they are, what happens. And I said, I'm sure you're great at what you do, but if I call up a client and I say, this is the guy you should use, then I feel that I'm responsible if there's a market downturn or if they didn't get the returns they were expecting, even if it has nothing to do with you. And I don't want to involve myself in their personal finances to that extent. It's beyond my role, and I don't want to give an endorsement when I have no idea. So he stopped talking to me. And only recently, and I mean after a decade.
Oh, you mean like severed communication stopped, not stopped in that moment.
No, not just walked away in that moment, but he absolutely stopped talking to me. So it was only recently, so after a decade, that he would be more cordial if we saw each other walking dogs or whatever. But he was really offended by this. And that has echoes in two things that happened in this week. So the first thing that happened is I gave a webinar. Actually, I gave the webinar late last week for the University of Maryland and the Small Business Development Center on negotiation. And one of the sponsors of the webinar was Morgan Stanley. And this week after the webinar, one of the Morgan Stanley guys reached out and said exactly that in his message. Hey, I looked at you on LinkedIn. I understand you're a small business attorney. We do wealth management, obviously. And why don't we set up a call, because we can share clients back and forth. And it has echoes to that because, again, I know who Morgan Stanley is, but I don't like to refer in that way out of my area when I have no way to evaluate. And the reason this really came up was not just that call. It was because a client of mine, a high net worth individual, said, hey, can you help me with estate planning? I had done contracts. I worked with this company, and he said, can you help me with estate planning? And they have some trusts involved, and they have, a lot of concerns, charitable initiatives. And I told him, obviously, I don't do that. I think you should go to somebody who really focuses on that area. And I recommended somebody who I knew that he knew, who focuses only on that area and is local to him. And he responded and he said, thanks for the recommendation. Thanks for reminding me of this person. I really love the person that you had recommended, but have you had any opportunity to assess his work? In other words, I love him as a person, and he's really smart, and he's engaged, and a great bedside manner, which I think you need in that area of practice. But his question was, have you had any opportunity to assess his work? And when I spoke to him, my answer was no, because I don't know that area. I can't really assess the work of a thoracic surgeon either. So there's that. Other
than so far no one's died.
Right.
I don't know.
So I've talked to him, and he seems to know what he's doing, but he could spit out a whole bunch of code and trust references, and I wouldn't know whether that was correct or not, because it's not my area. And that situation, and we went back and forth, and I gave him some other recommendations of people that I have worked more closely with, and I have some personal recommendations from, et cetera. But it really brought me back to the problem that I have on the lifeblood of business in many ways, which is referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how well people, whether they're bankers or accountants or estate planning lawyers or whatever, I know how well they can sit with somebody and talk to them and make them feel at ease. And I can get a sense of their EQ and all of that. But the reason I'm referring somebody out is because I don't have that particular expertise myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it comes to me, that's the difficult question often. How do you refer somebody? I don't think you survive in business not referring anybody, and we refer people all the time. But where's the river's edge on your recommendations to your clients, and how do you refer somebody with confidence when often the answer to have you assess those skills is no?
No. Yeah. So a couple things. I hold it a little bit differently than you because the way I look at it is at the end of the day, you're making a referral about trust. It's like, who do you trust with this kind of thing? And I think with any person, whether it's a financial advisor, an estate planner, or an accountant, anything, it's two parts. It's, are they at least competent at what they do for a living? And then do you trust them as a human? And I don't just mean trust them not to screw you over, but the things that I look for in people, like I have one financial advisor that I often recommend. And what I say is, not only do I think he's an incredibly good person, I know him to be an incredibly good and trustworthy human being in general. That I know for sure and have personal experience with. But I also love the questions that he asks. And I mean, it's one of the reasons that, I haven't seen your legal documents that you read. I don't have some sort of status. I don't think you've actually done any kind of official legal work for me where I've seen your contract review. But I refer you often because I know that you ask the right questions, that you will solve the right problem for people and not just give them an off the shelf kind of thing, which to me means that you are good at your work. Now, so when I refer this financial advisor, I will speak to that. I'll say, this is a good person that I trust as a person. I love the way he asks questions and that I feel like he's a good strategic thinker and he's curious and he will make sure that you are getting what you specifically need. I said, now, can I tell you that he will get you 27.6% more return than some other dude? No. Like you'll have your own financial advice, own financial philosophy about whether you're super aggressive or super whatever. I can't speak to that. But all the other things that I would want, because there might be somebody who I know does get the best returns, even if I did know that. But if I don't have those other two things, it's useless. So that's how I do referrals, because I personally hold those two things higher. And the fact that for me, that piece of they ask good questions and they're really curious and they get to the bottom of a thing, not that it trumps the basic knowledge, but I'm assuming if you've been in business this long and if a financial person that they have basic competencies in the actual doing of a thing.
Yeah. So what I hear, and I guess that's where it comes down to. So first of all, you separate results from process and ability to make somebody feel heard. And then you manage the expectations of the people to whom you're referring somebody to make that distinction clear. Right. And I guess, and that kind of crystallizes it, because I have a good friend and client who is a mechanic. And by all accounts, he's a very good mechanic. He's worked on my cars and they haven't blown up. I don't know whether there's anything challenging, but, right. But what I know about him is that he's an honest mechanic, which I treasure highly in any trade, but certainly in the trades where I know nothing about, I couldn't call him on anything.
I have a roofer that I would recommend to anybody, because when I called him, because we thought we needed a new roof, he immediately was like, you don't need a new roof. Like he was just like, wouldn't even discuss it. He was like, we can absolutely fix that. You don't need a new roof. And I was like, holy cow.
Right. And so you cling to those people like a 3-year-old in a storm. I think that's really, what I'd have to separate. And I'll have to reevaluate, because it's the process that I can vouch for. This person, that you will feel heard, that he or she will make an effort to make you feel heard, that there's an honor and an integrity. But after that, that's as far as I can go.
Well, I also think that results are, and then I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time on like what you do when referrals go bad, because that is another aspect of this that is mortifying, but does happen. I think, in terms of results, it's a little bit of a blurry area anyway. I mean, I have an attorney that did our, I don't even know if you call them estate planning docs, but like all of our wills and the medical things and, all those kind of documents. And I feel like we were very well taken care of. Like, I feel like we were well heard, and she asked a lot of questions I wouldn't thought of. And the way she walked us through it was really fantastic. Have we died and it all went smoothly? And all the paper, nothing was challenged, or we found out that there was an error of conflicting stuff. Like, I don't know, and I feel that way a little bit like with financial advisors. I think anyone getting a financial advisor who then, doesn't have the expectation that the market will go up and down quite a lot, and that's part of it, doesn't, probably needs a better financial advisor to explain that to them so that they don't have that expectation that the advisor has failed because the market just tanked. So those kinds of things. And I think it's a little bit, I also don't want to overstep the possibility of just the opinion part of results. Like, what someone considers really good work is sometimes very different. I mean, there are objective pieces to it. Like, if it's a dentist and, he knocks your teeth out by accident, obviously that is quantifiably bad. But, so I do a sort of hands-off I do a lot of managing expectations when I do any kind of referral. I'm very clear about what I know about the person and what I don't know. And, but there's still the person that I would start with, because I have those deeper pieces of what works.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of back off of referrals, and there are certain times I'll say this is the person you need to call, but a lot of times I'll back off. It's kind of like recommending a movie. If I think it's the most hysterical movie ever, I'm probably not going to say that, because the worst feeling in the world is this person sitting next to you going, whatever. But so, for example, as you know, one of my clients that I've been working with for decades is a large car dealer. And I have people call me, they say they want to buy a car. I used to say, I can call this guy, I'll call the president of the company, I'll tell him you're coming, he'll tell his general manager of whatever dealership you want, and they'll set you up, they'll get you the price, and they'll do that. And yeah, that didn't always work out so well. Mm-hmm. I mean, they would treat them well. They'd roll out the red carpet and all that stuff. But, car prices fluctuate. Different dealers have different incentives. Right. And so I'd had people come back say, yeah, I thought I was going to get a really great deal from them, but this other dealership that I just walked into beat them on price. So I had to back off and say, look, I can, and now that I think about it, it's exactly the point you made. I can guarantee that they will have somebody to meet you. They will treat you like somebody that matters to them. They do, and they're not going to be
actively shystering you.
Right. And they will, I believe, because they know that, that I sent you over, they're not going to be actively working against your best interest, et cetera. But what I recommend you do is you go out, find your best price on exactly what you want, call them. If they beat it, great. If they don't, fine. So I dial back on that. And you're right. I separate process from result.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a tiny bit of that is also, part of that is because, ultimately I trust people to make their own choices. Sometimes they just don't jive with a person. There are a couple of people that I often recommend that occasionally, people that I just instantly had a bond with. And then I'll talk to a friend. They're like, yeah, I talked to that guy. I don't know. He gave me the skeeves. Like I felt really awkward and weird. And I was like, really? I literally don't understand that. But that's the whole point. I'm sure I'm the same way with, well, I know for a fact there are a couple people in town that I often hear spoken about in just like deep, high regard, mixed metaphors there, super high regard. I just don't feel comfortable. Like there's something about them doesn't sit well with me. That just means they're not my people. And especially when you're talking about something like financial advisors, in some ways they're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. There's a financial advisor. That's why I think it's hysterical that someone connects with me on LinkedIn who's a financial advisor and they're like, let's connect. We could refer each other business. I'm like, it's kind of like the guy you were talking to. I was like, do you imagine that I don't already know like 80 financial advisors? And so some of those I at least presumably have at least a slightly closer connection with. Now, what I will say is different is when I have met people, whether it's a lawyer or financial advisor, some of those categories, or realtor, a lot of those categories where you meet a lot of people, some of them do have a very specific niche. And I love having those people for referral. Like I know a lawyer whose entire world, up, down, left, right, and center, is elder law and all the complexities of that. So when somebody's in one of those kind of things, he's the only person. Like this is a guy who lives, eats, and breathes the complications of elder law. And so he's your guy. Like I would never send that person to you. It's not your thing. Right. Right.
No, so, I refer out for that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so I do want to spend a minute on I always appreciate it when someone that I have given a referral to reaches back to me and says, by the way, that didn't go so well. Yeah. And like, please tell me everything, not in a gossipy kind of way, but I need to know because it is a core. People ask me for referrals a lot because they trust me to give them at least decent guidance, better than just Googling it and picking a person.
Which is a large responsibility. That's where I started the story. It's a real sense of responsibility when you know that people are inclined to follow your recommendation. Depending upon, now, if it's a recommendation on what ballpoint pen should I buy, there's really not. No,
that's pretty. I consider that pretty high level importance. I am very, very passionate about my pens.
But for financial planners or things that have deep significance in your life that aren't easily replaceable, that's a high responsibility.
I've never, weirdly, I haven't considered it. Well, I mean, I guess my whole point in this part of the conversation is that I do consider it a responsibility. I've never considered that. Oh gosh, I know what I want to say here, but it's a little bit hard to articulate. I don't consider it a responsibility on the front end because I am very clear about what part of their work I have personally experienced or even know someone who has personally experienced and can speak to that. And what part of it is just like, I really trust this person to do the thing. But it's almost like innocent until proven guilty on the competency side. When I hear that something on the like actual delivery of what that person did, like I have an accountant. Well, actually, so there's a financial advisor who then referred an accountant that they work with all the time for a client of mine. And in that scenario, the accountant and they're a nonprofit. They didn't need a ton. This accountant was reconciling their bank statements weekly and charging them for it. Meanwhile, they have like 3 transactions a week and charging them like $100 a week to reconcile their bank statements. And there was all sorts of stuff that I was just like, ew, ew. And unfortunately, they had missed. They weren't, as some people unfortunately do. And by some people, I don't ever mean me, hadn't been paying attention to all this stuff. So months had gone by and then they had accrued all these bills with this accountant. And because then becomes the question, do you let the person in that case, it was like a double referral because there was a third party involved. But regardless, when I hear back, I definitely file it away and I try and decide, was that a circumstantial thing? Or does that contaminate my trust that this is a person that I will refer? Or does it just feel like in the category of like, mistakes happen? Or, in that case, I let my referral know that this person had this experience with the accountant, and he was very grateful. He was like, holy cow, I'm not okay with that. Thank you so much. Because that was his referral street cred that had been sort of damaged. But when it's my personal referral that has fallen down, I try and figure out whether I think it's something damaging. B, I will often try and let them know with the permission of the person that I can, or in some ways, because I would certainly want to know if somebody, if I were that person.
You'd want to know it is street cred. But I do find that separation of process with result interesting, particularly because I look at what so many people, how so many people approach me asking for referrals. Like I'll have, bankers talk about their bank, but they'll talk about the products. We have this 6-month CD. We have this. I don't know. I don't care. What I care is can the business owner call you, and can we get a sense of who you are? Not just, we make decisions locally. I think that's great, but just, will they listen, and is this the type of person that I can see my clients wanting to sit down with and talk about something deeply important? Mm-hmm. Same with people in your area. You could look. My son Alex turns 18 today. He could call himself a coach if he wanted to, right? He could call himself, I'm an executive coach. But it doesn't mean he's a good executive coach, or an experienced, or has the training, or takes the discipline seriously, or all of the things that go into a really good executive coach. And so so much of the way I think about what you do is process, because the client is often in charge of their own results.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But it is process. And so it makes sense to me that that's how you separate it. And that's, the referrals, that I know that you're going to be happy with the process of what happens. I have to, where I always say the water's edge, where it ends is that I can't vouch for the results because of so many variables, including the fact that that's not my discipline.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes people need referrals for things that I've just never needed and may never need, but I still have, because the other way I collect, I don't know, it's almost like a gamed point system. If I haven't experienced them, the other way somebody can gain referral points from me
is to complete a side quest.
Yes, there's always a side quest, always. Is if a bunch of the people that I know and trust tend to recommend that person, like that, it's like referral by referral almost, they get some sort of points that way. But I have also referred people sometimes with a very strong caveat to say, hey, I just have encountered this person. Thus far, they aren't making my spidey sense get weirdly, in the bad way, tingly. And they seem pretty nice. And I like the way they talk about what they do. It sounds really, but that's as far as my referral can reach. It's sort of like being really clear about how much is your referral and how much is like, and now it's on you to decide. Because sometimes at least that is still, if the person's only other option is Googling it, or, the equivalent of opening up the yellow pages, then even I don't really know anything about them yet, but so far they don't seem terrible. That's better than nothing. So I see it as sort of a stacked system of how important is the thing, and how much, what are the person's other options if I don't give them a referral.
And so a lot of what we're talking about is the discussion and the process and the conversation, which reminds me that a really good place to go for discussion and conversation would be our Facebook group.
You're getting really good at finding places to mention the Facebook group. I am so impressed. Why, Elliot? Let me tell you how you can find the Facebook group. There's a link on our website. So here's my story. You can also find us on Facebook. This is a Facebook group. You can find us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is SHMS Podcast, but you can also just search So Here's My Story. And once you're on that page, there's a little button right in the top that says visit the group or join the group or check out the group or something like that.
So just to be clear, are you referring people to our group?
Oh, okay. I think we're hitting a level of cheese here that I might have to bow out of. But why, yes, Elliot, I am making a strong referral that you join our Facebook group.
Just wanted to clarify.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
Your stories.
You can find links to that group as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us. Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.